My name is ThePrimeagen, and I've been using Vim for about 10 years. There is Vim, the program, and Vim, the motions. Now, Vim motions, I don't understand why anyone who is programming does not use those. Those are extremely efficient, and they're very well done, and they're available in IntelliJ, Sublime, even Atom, VS Code, anything you want to use, they have. Part series is going to be focused on making you awesome at Vim motions. All right, so right away, I do not think that you should start out in Vim if you have no familiarity with Vim. I really do think you should continue to use VS Code if that's what you're using, IntelliJ if that's what you're using, whatever editor you're currently using, use the Vim mode or the Vim plugin. Now, I think one of the big mistakes when learning Vim is that you try to learn every single key possible, all the different shortcuts, and then you're just sitting there just like mentally grinding to try to find the most optimal one in every single moment. That sounds exhausting. So that's why I just took a much different approach myself to learning it, and I'm going to try to give you that exact same approach that I took 10 years ago. All right, so the first thing you need to know about Vim is that it's a modal editor. Whether you're using it in VS Code or Vim itself, you are in various modes, and there's 4 modes that you really need to be concerned about. First off, the mode that you're in right away is normal mode. It just means that I can move my cursor around. Second mode is insert mode. You can see it right down here, says insert. That just means I can type like a regular editor, hit all the enters, do everything that it will try to auto indent and do the best job it can. Third is visual mode. You can see right down here again, I'm in visual line mode. As I move, it's kind of like highlighting with your cursor. And of course, the fourth mode is command mode. If I press colon, you'll notice right here that a colon appears and my cursor actually appears on this line. I can now type out some commands. A command you should know is W, enter, will save the current file. WQ will attempt to quit. So let's go over each of the modes in detail. All right, so normal mode, the mode you can move your cursor around. The most foundational movements you need to know is J and K. K will obviously go upwards, J will go downwards. I have my keystrokes right here so you can watch them happen. L is gonna go this way, and H is gonna go this way. Now, these are the most fundamental movements. I do recommend getting pretty dang good with them. But you'll quickly realize that H, J, K, and L is just not enough, right? That H and L is really inconvenient. You just like hold it and slowly go over. That would just melt my mind. Now, I told you Vim is fast. It is smooth. It blows people away when you see someone who is really good at it use it. So obviously L and H can't be the last of your movements. So the last 2 I really wanted to show you was W, which hops over by word, something equivalent of like holding Option, I think, on Mac and pressing the arrow key, and B, the opposite, walks backwards. So those movements are called motion. A motion is anything that moves the cursor. All right, so I wanted to go over the anatomy of a motion. So right now, all we've been focusing on is this part right here. H, J, K, L, W, B, those are motions. They move the cursor. But did you know that you can kind of augment them? Meaning that if we add a count to it, it'll be performed multiple times. So check this out. So you can see about 8 lines up, there is a to-do line right up there, which if I press 8K, I will jump my cursor 8 times up to that to-do line. If I wanted to go back, say, all the way down to the return statement, 16 lines down, I can go 16J. You can see right here I did 16J, and my cursor landed on the return statement right there. Obviously, counts work with all the other motions, so I can technically go like 10L, but that'd be weird, or 2B. Also, that would be weird. That sounds like way too much overhead to try to count how many jumps you have. I would not use that as a way to move around in Vim. All right, so let's add a little bit more. Let's talk about commands you can do. I want to focus right now just on the D command. D stands for delete, meaning that if I wanted to delete a line, I can press DD. That will just simply delete a singular line. I press U to undo that delete. I can press Control R to redo my previous action. So U is like Control Z, Control R is like Control Y. Ds can be used with motion. Just like I said, we can do a command, a count, and a motion. So jumping back here, if I'm on this line right here and I want to delete all the way down to the return statement, but not the return statement, what I can do is I can go D, 3J. I have deleted my current line plus 3 down below me. That means I can also go delete word. That's how you would delete a single word. Delete 2 word. You could delete 2 words if you really want to. Again, I don't do the whole 2 with words or back or any of those. That means you can do DB and delete backwards. So D is a command you can mix with a motion. Hopefully you're starting to understand and you're happy that I kind of went over the anatomy of a motion, because this should start making sense. Okay, I can move the cursor and I can delete move the cursor. All right, so let's talk about insert mode. Now, first off, I want you to look at where my cursor is right up here. Now, this cursor, of course, is fat. It has, it covers an entire character. It's just something I've gotten used to. Some people, when they go into insert mode, their cursors can become thin. I never like that. So don't be taken back by this as you watch me go. But if I press I go on the left side of my cursor for insert mode. So as you can see, I pressed I to go into insert mode, and then I just started typing, and boom, these characters come here. Now we can leave insert mode by pressing escape. You can also press Control C, and you can also press Control open bracket. Control open bracket and escape are the same. Control C does have some minor variations to it, mostly in visual block mode, that cause some weirdness to it. So you got to know which one you like. All right, so you can press U to undo, of course. Now, if I press A, you'll notice that it moves my cursor, but I'm in insert mode. So now as I type, I'm on the other side of the 0. Now you're thinking, okay, when would you actually, do you actually ever need that? You'd be surprised at how often pressing A to move forward, like how often you actually use that. A and I become something that you should just use all the time. It's very, very surprising. So I'm going to leave insert mode, undo it. There we go. There's a bunch of other ways to enter into insert mode, but I think you should really just get used to that. Right now, we're about few options. Even if it's inconvenient, you need to learn the basics and move fast. All right, so let's move on to the last part, visual mode. So this one, I'm actually going to show you how to use yank and paste in visual mode. So visual mode has two primary ways you're going to use it. If you press V, you'll go into visual mode down here. That means I can use any of the motions that I've learned so far. So I can press W, and you'll notice that it's like highlighting as it's going. This is effectively like using your mouse and dragging it and highlighting a region. At this point, I could copy and paste. So normally you'd press probably Control C or Command C if you're on one of those Phil's drink and coffee Max. But in Vim, you just press Y. Y yanks it. Now, if I press P, I will paste it. As you can see, I paste it. Now, notice something. It's not giving me a new line. It's pasting the exact contents of what I yanked. So let's undo it with U, undo, undo, undo. And this time, let's use Shift V. We'll go into visual line mode. Now, when I yank this, if I paste it, I actually get that new line at the end. A little bit more convenient, so you kind of got to know which one you want to do. Let's do a little bit of comboing. So what I can do is I can actually highlight, I can yank it, I can jump down here and I can highlight this and I can paste it. So you can paste over a highlighted region. But I'm going to show you something that's a little bit weird. What do you think happens if I press P now? Well, I get the last thing I deleted. So that means if you press DD and delete a line and you press P, you actually paste the last thing you deleted. So yanking and deleting goes to the same buffer. And again, if you highlight a bunch of stuff and you paste it, you'll delete all of that and then paste over it with the contents you have in your paste buffer. And now when I press P, I get all the previous things I deleted. And of course, you can use yanking just by itself. So I can press Y. You don't have to highlight first to use yanking. Now, if you remember the anatomy of a motion, I did show you that you can do a command, a count, and the motion. So I can do yank, say 5, and down. I just yanked all the way to this offset line right here. So now when I press P, you'll notice I got those 5 lines and I was able to paste them all, which means I can also do the exact same thing with D, D5J, and now I can paste the things that I just got done deleting down below. So the first thing I want to start off with is a couple new motions for you. This is going to really help you move horizontally. And if you have some basic movements, underscore goes to the beginning, $ goes to the end, 0 goes to the beginning character, like the 0th one. So I can mix those just like we did before. We can do D $, which will delete from your cursor all the way to the end. But sometimes you want to be able to move around in the line to a specific character. So let's take a look at this first opening parenthesis right here. If I wanted to jump to it, I could use F, opening parenthesis. F goes forward to the character you save. Let's go back. I can also do T, same character, and this jumps up to, but not on the character you specify. If you wish to repeat it, you can use comma and semicolon. Comma goes backwards, semicolon goes forward. Here's a good example. Let's go like this, FE, and then as I use semicolon, you can see that I'm walking forward. As I press comma, you can see I walk backwards. But let's go the other direction. If I wanted to jump back to the equal sign, I can press capital F equals, and it'll jump back to the equal sign. Exact same thing with T. Capital T equals will jump to the equal sign, but not on top. I've actually found myself using these quite a bit. And I remember that time when I first discovered this. This was just like, it was just such an amazing feel knowing that I can jump through the lines like that. Now, if you remember from the previous video, we did talk about the anatomy of a motion. A command can be used along with a count and a motion. So let's jump back here. If F, opening squirrely brace, jumps to the squirrely brace, that means D, F, opening parenthesis.
I can never say those.
It will delete from my character up to and including the opening parenthesis. Let's undo that. Let's walk back. That means DT, opening parenthesis, will delete up to it, but not including it. My cursor is now on top of it. Same thing with yank. YT, opening parenthesis, will yank up into. And of course, VT, opening parenthesis, will do the same thing. This, of course, works the other direction. If I go V, capital F, equal sign, I will jump back and highlight. Same thing with yank as well. Yank, capital F, equal sign. I just yanked all of that. Now I can paste all of it in. So a big thing to start seeing here is that it always goes command, count, motion. So just to kind of show you one more thing, I can D2 F, opening parenthesis. Notice that it deleted past that first one and to the second one. Now, I don't often do that level, but you could. You actually could. So just don't forget the anatomy of a motion. A couple more. Capital I will go to the beginning of the line, but in insert mode. Capital A will go to the end of the line, but in insert mode. Now, this should be pretty familiar with how I and A work. It's just the bigger version of it. Lastly, these two are just the most amazing. O will make a new line and go into insert mode, whereas capital O will make a new line above your cursor and then go into insert mode. Anatomy of a motion, it went count and then the motion itself. A motion, of course, is anything that moves the cursor. So J and K are motions, which means I can do something like 5J, and it will move it down 5 lines. Now, this is the reason why you have something like relative line numbers right here, is that way it allows you to jump exactly where you want to jump. So take this one right here, this 8 down, bottom 5 you want right here. I can just go 8J. And of course, practicing that makes a huge difference. Relative line numbers are really great, but one of the problems is, what happens if you need code that's beyond what you can see right here? What happens if we needed to go all the way down here to the 13? Well, that would be problematic, right? Because you couldn't relatively jump down there. And the last thing you'd want to do is be doing something like 30J. Oh, that's not enough. Okay, 12J, right? Like, you don't want to be jumping. You don't want to be guessing. So the second vertical movement you can do, which I used to do and I stopped doing, was move by paragraph. A paragraph is simply any contiguous non-white space. So these sets of 13s here is a paragraph. So if I go opening brace, it's going to go up by paragraph. You'll notice that I appear on the top of every one of these. If I go closing, squirrely brace, you'll notice I'm on the bottom of every paragraph. Now, I used to use this kind of movement all the time, but one thing I found is that it moves based on how the code is spaced out. So if you happen to work with somebody that says programs like this, where they have a function, they have if, and they have things inside of here, and then it keeps on going, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes, and then you try to jump up, you'll jump the entire function. It becomes very, very complicated because you only jump based on how someone else formats their code. So I don't really recommend using this type of movement. The type of movement that I actually most prefer, and at first I really hated it. My old Vim videos had me not recommending it. Actually, using this was my recommendation, but now I've changed, which is to start using Control D to jump a half page down and Control U to jump a half page up. Now, I want you to notice something when I do that. Look at my cursors. I'm way down here. It's on like the bottom third of my screen. When I press Control D, where does it end up? It's in the middle of my screen. When I press Control U, it's in the middle of my screen, always. Now, how did I do that? Of course, since I use Lua, I'm using the Lua functions right here, but effectively, I remap Control D. If you're not familiar, of course, with this, please go check out the VimRC video, but I remap it with a non-recursive remap to take Control D to become Control D ZZ. ZZ centers your view. So that means whenever I hit Control D, it also centers my view. I find it to really make moving with Control D and Control U much easier because I'm just looking in one spot and I'm letting the code kind of hit my eyes instead of becoming disoriented where my cursor went. I highly recommend this. A couple more kind of vertical movements. You can do G to go all the way down to the bottom, that's capital G, or GG to go all the way up to the top. Now, here's the thing, is that I always forget which way is which, so I'm always like, okay, there we go. Right? It takes a couple tries. I rarely use this motion because it's not necessarily something you need to do very often. I guess if I'm adjusting some imports, I will double G up to the top and go, okay, here, let me adjust some imports, but that's that's a rarity, and often my LSP is the thing that's actually doing the imports. And of course, you can also just simply type in the colon and go to an exact line number. So if line 100 was existing in this file, I could jump all the way to line 100. Very useful if you have some sort of error and you know what line it's on. And of course, if you exceed the amount of lines, it just goes to the last line. A couple things I really did want to just kind of address is going to be searching. So with searching, if you just type in /, which I did right here, and then start typing, you will see it show up. As you can see, 5 got highlighted. Now I'm on 5. I can press enter. I can press N to go to the next results, and it will wrap all the way around as I do it. And of course, Shift N to go backwards. Now you can also do a reverse search. You can do a search upwards with question mark and then the thing you want to search for. Let's say 4. Now when I press N, it goes backwards. And of course, when I press Shift N, it actually goes forwards. And of course, I do the exact same thing that I did before. If I use this whole searching technique, I automatically replace N with ZZ to center it, and ZV, of course, which is some fold operations. I don't really use folds, but if I did, I'd have it pre-prepared to be using with N, or searching forward/backwards. All right, there is a convenience for searching. So if I just have this crazy word right here, and I take it and I paste it a couple times, let's just paste it a couple paragraphs down. There we go, and I just wanted to search for that. All I have to do is press asterisk while my caret is on it, and it will automatically load that word, that contiguous word, into my search term, and I can press N to go through it, and of course Shift N to go backwards. You can also press #, and it'll do the exact same thing as a question mark search. In other words, an inverted search. So when I press next, I actually go upwards. Notice I went from line 80 to 61, from 61 to 30, from 30 to 15. And Shift N goes forward. Now, I don't really ever use the octothorpe, the hashtag, the #. I instead just use asterisk and then use capital N, lowercase n. The name is ThePrimeagen.